I am reading this article from my blog, link in the description. Speaking in Tongues and Shaking Explained. Before I get into the article, a quick mention. I have a shop selling t-shirts with custom Speaking in Tongues quotes. Link is in the description. Speaking in tongues and shaking is common. I have experienced it many times and I have seen people experience it too. What causes people to shake when they speak in tongues? For some people, it is their hands that shake, but for others, it is the entire body. In this article, I will share the causes of shaking when you speak in tongues and how to handle it. The aim is to help you understand why people shake when speaking in tongues and why it is normal. Why people shake when speaking in tongues. People shake when they speak in tongues because of the power of the Holy Spirit. Usually, the shaking happens after someone has launched deep into praying in tongues. As you pray in tongues, your spirit becomes stronger while your flesh becomes weaker. The Bible tells us that the spirit and the flesh are always contending. The shaking happens because the body is weak. Speaking in tongues edifies us. The edification involves empowering our spirits. On the day of Pentecost, the disciples of Jesus were in fear and they had locked themselves in the upper room. But when they were filled with the Holy Spirit and spoke in tongues, they became bold and went out to spread the gospel of Jesus. Where did the fear go to? By speaking in tongues, they empowered their spirits and weakened their flesh. Since fear is of the flesh, it disappeared. In the book of Proverbs, the Bible tells us that the wicked flee when no one is pursuing, but that the righteous are as bold as a lion. The boldness of a righteous person comes from the Spirit of God. When someone speaks in tongues and shakes, it is because of the power of the Spirit. Hands shaking when speaking in tongues. Shaking when speaking in tongues can be of specific body parts such as hands or the whole body. When hands shake when you speak in tongues, it is because the Spirit of God has released power into your hands. Some people feel their hands becoming heavier than usual, while others can't stop them from shaking. Since our hands are tools to be used specifically for healing, when God deposits in you the healing power, your hands shake. Hands are also used in waging war. When you speak in tongues and feel your hands becoming heavy, it is usually God putting armor on your hands. The armor is spiritual, but because at that time you are in tune with the Spirit, you experience it as if it is physical. Shaking the whole body when speaking in tongues. Shaking the whole body is usually the surge of power of the Holy Spirit throughout your body. In most cases, the shaking happens when you approach the presence of God. The terror of the Lord is scary. Your body reacts by shaking. Remember when John, who wrote the book of Revelation, saw Jesus? He fell down as if he was dead. Anytime I launch deep into speaking in tongues, my body becomes weak. The weakness scares me from launching any further. One day, I persisted in speaking in tongues even after my body had become weak. I entered a realm of perfect peace, but I don't recall anything. When I came back to my senses, over half an hour had passed, but I couldn't recall what had happened. All I felt was great peace, but I was very weak. How to handle shaking when speaking in tongues. When you are speaking in tongues and you start shaking, it can be scary if you are not used to it. But if you know that it is happening because of a surge of power of the Holy Spirit, you will be at peace. The important thing is to know why you are experiencing the shivering. Is it an impartation? Is it the Holy Spirit driving out an evil spirit? Are you approaching the presence of God? If you know the reason why you are shaking while speaking in tongues, you will know how to handle it. I have experienced shaking when speaking in tongues because the Spirit of God was angry. The anger manifested in me as body shaking, the same way some people shake when they are very angry. I took a blanket, folded it, and hit it as I spoke in tongues. I did that until the anger subsided, then the shaking stopped. It was roughly 10 minutes. If your shaking is caused by anger from the Spirit of God, it only subsides after the anger of the Spirit of God subsides. Sometimes the shaking manifests because the Spirit of God is driving out an evil spirit. In such a case, the shaking will stop once the evil spirit has left. Shaking of hands when you speak in tongues often doesn't go away even when you stop speaking in tongues. This is usually an impartation of the power of God to do His work. The power that God deposits in you will remain in you until you use it to minister to others. If your hands are shaking even after you stop speaking in tongues, lay them on someone who wants an impartation of the Holy Spirit. If there is someone sick or anyone who needs the power of the Holy Spirit, lay your hands on the person and the shaking will stop. Shaking when you speak in tongues that is caused by approaching the presence of God usually ends on its own after the encounter. You will usually leave the encounter weak. It is advisable to eat afterwards. Speaking in tongues and shaking. Conclusion. Whenever you dive deep into speaking in tongues, your spirit becomes sensitive and your body shakes a lot. The power that you tap into when you speak in tongues can be too much for your body to handle, and it results in shivering. There's nothing to worry about whenever you experience shaking when speaking in tongues. As you grow in the gift, you will know how to handle it. The Holy Spirit knows that you are flesh and blood, and so He won't do things that harm you. If you feel shaking is too much, you can always ask the Holy Spirit to calm you down. Peace is His fruit. Experiencing shaking when speaking in tongues is a good sign. It shows that the tongues you are speaking have an effect. Treasure it. Peace.